This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
Oh man, somebody strap me in.
Oh baby, because we've got one hell of a ride for you today.
Yes, we do.
To be kept up on all of the crazy stuff we've got going on, feel free to follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We're also on Facebook, and on Facebook we have a subgroup called Citizens of the Milky Way. Feel free to join that group as well. Now, if one episode a week is not enough for you, which it ain't.
It's not, baby.
It just ain't.
It is not.
Okay, let's just be honest about it. Fear not, because we have a solution to your problem. It's at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
On there's all sorts of monthly bonus content that you can subscribe to, anywhere ranging from movie commentary all the way up to full bonus episodes and everything.
Oh, yeah.
In between. Once again, to look into all of that bonus content, that's at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. Now, in November and then in December, we are coming to two great cons. First, in November, we will be at Days of the Dead.
Woo!
That's the 19th through the 21st of November. And then in December, which will be the 10th through the 12th, we will be at C2E2, aka Chicago's Comic-Con. And our show itself will be on the night of the 10th. That is Friday night.
At 7 p.m. That's a prime slot.
I know, we are so excited to be working on that and to show you what our live shows are gonna all be about.
Hell yeah.
So feel free to check those out. Once again, that's Days of the Dead and C2E2.
Very excited for those.
We are so pumped, and it's gonna be a blast. Now, last week, we dived in to the crazy, mixed up world of Ouija.
We really buttered that bread, honey. We did.
We sure did. We went for it. We went large. And what a great, fun, big episode that was.
People have been going nuts for it. People have been reaching out to us. It's great. We should do if you've got personal Ouija stories, send them to us because we'll
read them on the pod, and we want to. Also, earlier this week, we released our interview with Greg D'Alessandro from Weekly World News.
Hell yeah.
And absolutely love that episode as well. It's so fun seeing kind of how the sausage gets made.
Absolutely.
A little bit there. Finding out more about what Weekly World News is really all about.
Oh, yeah.
But today, we have something that is quite different than both of those previous episodes.
Oh, yes.
This episode is going to make you look over your shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to make you turn a light on.
Yeah.
This is a scary one, folks.
This is one of those, if you got the guts, if you got the grapefruits, this is one to attempt to listen to at home alone.
Right.
But don't feel bad if I probably wouldn't do it.
It would be a lot to listen to this home alone.
Maureen knows. Sometimes I'll get done editing an episode of ours and I'll be like, want to go into a dark room.
I know. Sometimes we have to walk to the kitchen together because
just from editing our own show.
Right. And this is one of those. So Dylan, please, what are we getting into today?
Well, a big facet of the Halloween genre is the whole concept of the home invader.
Yes.
That the call is coming from inside the house.
Exactly.
You know, we got a new Halloween movie coming out. They announced a new Scream. I think it's coming out in January is coming out.
Nice.
This is a big facet. This is a fear. This is a legitimate fear, a horrified.
Oh my God.
You know,
it's so scary to think about, especially for babysitters out there. Oh my God. Very scary.
Typically we would do, you know, we liked our episodes to focus on one story. Today we have for you 3 stories that we've known about for so long and we've been so fascinated by, but maybe they just weren't big enough to fit like a whole episode.
Right.
But we knew we wanted to do them on their own, so we made a collection of some of the most horrifying home invasion stories we've ever heard of.
Oh my God, yes.
Today's episode is There's Someone in the House. Oh, yes. Now,
Oof, I'm nervous, guys.
these 3 stories that you are about to hear are known as such. The Phantom Stalker of Stark County, the Denver Spider-Man, and the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. These are 3 very different.
Yeah.
What I loved about it, these are all terrifying, obviously just so terrifying, but very different in nature.
Yeah, totally.
And let me just real quick just run down my sources for you.
Please.
The May 25th, 1994 episode of Unsolved Mysteries. The Phantom Stalker of Bill and Dorothy Wacker by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe. The Tale of the Denver Spider-Man by Caroline at history.denverlibrary.org. Inside the Grisly Case of Cassie Jo Stoddart by Danielle Tinning at allthat'sinteresting.com. And then where I had to, I filled in the blanks with some Wikipedia.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Well, let's buckle up and get started.
Okay.
Starting off tonight is the tale of the Phantom Stalker of Stark County. So our first tale happened in the small rural town of Massillon, Ohio, located in Stark County. And it pertains to an elderly couple named Bill and Dorothy Wacker. And they'd lived in this town their entire lives. They had been living together in this same house for the 48 years they'd been married. So this wasn't like they move into a new neighborhood and shit starts happening. This was so they were literally
They've
an
been
elderly
there
couple.
for a long ass time.
And this is a smaller town. It's everyone knew each other. Everyone was real sweet. It's a rural town, you know. People knew this couple and liked them. They had known them their whole lives. They were a sweet older couple, very liked about town. Needless to say, the Wackers had no enemies, that they were aware of at least. And the town was small enough that everybody knew everybody. So if someone did have a problem with someone would know something. Well, it all began one day in 1984 when the Wackers came home after running an errand to find their home just upended. The entire place looked as though it was ransacked. It looked like they'd been hit by a burglar. But as they surveyed the house, they began to realize that strangely, nothing had been taken.
That's worse.
Yeah.
That is so much worse than being robbed, is that someone comes in and then they don't take anything.
Right, because either they're sending you a message or they thought your shit wasn't worth it.
Right.
That's either way, it's awful.
Exactly. Either you are terrified to death or you have just been absolutely roasted to death.
That's a last generation Xbox. Screw this place. Let's get out of here. The whole house was a mess. And the Wackers had never experienced anything like this before in their whole time living in Stark County. You know, why would someone do this to them, even a stranger? Why would they do this but not take anything? It'd be one thing if there was someone, you know, who needed something desperate, you know.
Right.
Nothing was fucking taken. And because nothing was taken, the Wackers made the choice to not report the incident to police.
Okay, that is a terrible fucking idea.
Not the best idea.
That is the worst idea I've heard on Creep Street in a long time. And we hear a lot of bad ideas on Creep Street.
We do.
If that happens to you, you need to report it.
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you.
Well, later that year, though, the same thing happened again. The Wackers came home to find their home seemingly torn apart, but as they looked, nothing had been taken. So once again, they chose not to report it.
Jesus Christ.
Well, a little more time passes, and now it's January 16th of 1985. And it happened again for a third time. And though nothing appeared to be taken, the Wackers decided enough was enough.
Okay.
And they told the police. They called the
third
police.
time's the goddamn charm.
I guess so. The police responded immediately, and, an investigation was made, but the police couldn't find any answers. There was no fingerprints, nothing that would point them in the direction of who might have done this. And the whackers, of course, weren't pleased, but they accepted the police's conclusions, and they did their best to just kind of try to get back to normal life. And for the next 6 months, they were left in peace. But this was only the calm before the storm.
Oh, no.
It was a summer day in July of 1985, and Dorothy Wacker was at home resting. She had recently undergone open heart surgery, and the whole town knew that she was at home recovering. So aside from the occasional visit to bring over food or gifts or whatnot, folks knew that Dorothy needed to be left home to rest.
Right.
So that's why it came as a surprise when Dorothy was startled by a loud knock at the door. She got up and made her way to the front door and opened it to find a young man with blonde hair, probably in his 20s, standing on her doorstep. Now, Dorothy was hesitant as she didn't recognize this guy, but he was very polite, and he told her that his car had broken down just up the road and he wanted to know if he could use her phone.
Oh, no.
Well, Dorothy was hesitant, but the young man seemed very polite, so she let him in. Dorothy showed him where the phone was, and he was very grateful.
Oh, my God. You know who's grateful and polite? Serial killers.
That's right.
You understand?
She went into the other room and listened as he made his call for a tow truck. She heard him hang up, and he thanked her for letting him use the phone, and he left. Dorothy, though, had a feeling that the man hadn't left yet, even though she thought she had heard him go. It was weird. She felt like there was still someone there.
Yeah, because she didn't watch him leave. She just heard him leave.
She was like in the, because she can't go around, so she just showed him where the phone was, and then she went to sit back down, and, why get up if you don't have to, especially after you had open heart surgery, you know what I mean? So she had a feeling that there was still someone there, so she got up and made her way to the hallway. And before she knew what was happening, she was struck by a blow to the back of the head, which knocked her unconscious. When Dorothy awoke, she found herself on the kitchen floor, gagged and with her feet and hands bound.
Right after heart surgery, too?
Right after heart surgery.
Oh, God.
Dorothy was terrified. She had no idea if the intruder was still there or if they had left, so she did her best to wriggle across the kitchen floor to the hallway. She looked both ways, saw no one. She didn't know if maybe he was still in the house, but eventually Dorothy was able to wriggle her way to the front door where she was able to yell and get the attention of the neighbors. The neighbors, of course, rushed over and helped her, and they called an ambulance, and an ambulance came out immediately. Now, very fortunately, Dorothy's injuries weren't that bad, with only some mild lacerations to the head and a sore jaw. Dorothy was even able to give a detailed description of the young man who had come to use the phone, and the police just went right to work looking for this person. They once again searched the entire house, but this time, though, it appeared that a few things had been taken. But it wasn't what you'd expect, not money or jewelry or shit like that. What was taken was a .22 caliber handgun, an antique watch, a movie camera, and a radio scanner.
Interesting.
But this wasn't even the most bizarre thing. On the wall, written in crayon, was a message that read, "Cheaper, but will do."
Oh.
As if to say, thanks for these items, they're cheap, but they'll work.
Damn, this motherfucker is roasting their asses. At first he wouldn't even take it, and then he's like, fuck.
But here's where it gets even weirder. Randomly, and without explanation, from time to time, the items that were taken would be returned, usually waiting by the front door wrapped in paper or cloth.
That's weird.
That's weird.
That's very weird. That does make it seem like it's more of...
This person's fucking off.
Oh, no, I think they're doing it to scare them.
It's clear, like, not because of, like, financial, like, it's a weird game. It's
he's
weird.
doing it to scare them, I'm sure. Because, he's not selling it for the money, or these things for the money or whatever.
Exactly, right. Well, things only began to escalate. Shortly after this, the family began to receive bizarre phone calls that would come randomly at all hours of the day and night. Sometimes they would answer the phone and there would be no one there. Other times they could hear someone breathing on the other end of the line. And other times, whoever this person was, this voice would curse and threaten them and mock them. And it just kept getting worse. At night, there would come loud banging noises on the doors and the walls. And when they would get up and rush to see who was doing it, there'd be no one there. The whackers even upped their game and installed a big security floodlight on the property, that was kind of, I'm assuming, like motion activated, and it would flood the whole process so, they could see someone. This only seemed to amuse the intruder. One day, they found a note left for them that only read, "Your lights are a laugh," and lights was spelled with a Z.
Oh, okay, so this guy's cool then.
This guy's cool then.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
At least he's chill as fuck.
This was actually just one of many notes that the family would find randomly around the house. And they all seem to be written sloppily, almost like a child would write. Like they looked like a child's handwriting. It was usually with crayon or pencil. And they never had any fingerprints on them, which was also weird. But this harassment went on for years. The police would respond many times, but were never able to find anything.
What?
But then on October 27th, 1993, so this is a number of years later, Dorothy was once again attacked by an unseen assailant. But this time her injuries were more serious. She had a concussion as well as lacerations to the skin.
Oh, God.
The whackers were now fully terrified, and they even attempted a stakeout of their own, which actually is kind of one of the more unintentionally funny things I've heard of. So how they did this stakeout, they had some friends. They had a friend that stayed in the house with Dorothy. Bill Whacker posted up in an RV that was parked in their driveway, like a RV camper thing. And then another group watched the house from a different vantage point. I don't know if it was from another house or up the street. They communicated via walkie-talkie, but needless to say, they didn't see anyone, but it should be said, they did this stakeout once and for only about 4 hours.
Oh my God.
And if you needed more evidence that this was an elderly couple, they wrapped up by 10:30 p.m. that night and acted like that was super late. Remember in that episode of Unsolved Mysteries, they're like, I mean, my God, we were out there for one night for 4 hours and we didn't see anything. I mean, it was nearly 10:30 when we wrapped up.
Oh my God, that's so classic.
Like, obviously feel so bad for them, but that was just kind of this unintentionally funny, like...
It's like, why did you even do it?
And it's like clear probably Bill Whacker's sitting in that fucking RV that's in the driveway. Like, what?
Yeah, so like they started their stakeout at like 6 p.m.?
Right, yeah.
Like, that's insane.
So they wrap up their investigation at around 10:30, but as they're wrapping up the stakeout, there came a strange thumping noise at the back door. So the group rushed around the back of the house but found no one except a single message that read, "Get the message." Somehow the perpetrator was able to sneak up to the house despite their crack team of stakeout, whatever, and the security floodlights, which I'm more curious about. Why did a floodlight not go on?
Right.
That's what obviously I don't think it would have been hard to get around their fucking stakeout.
Yeah, clearly.
But the floodlight's a little different.
Right.
Very fascinating.
It makes you wonder what if one of the people that was a part of the stakeout is the person that did it, you know?
We'll get to that. Now, the harassment continued until Bill Whacker passed away on July 9th, 1999. Dorothy would live a while longer, passing away on July 22nd, 2010. They never found out who was responsible. The story was made famous, obviously, when it was covered in that episode of Unsolved Mysteries. And in the episode, they also bring up the possibility that it might have actually been Bill Whacker doing it to Dorothy.
Oh no.
The attacks did stop all at once Bill died.
Right.
But Bill defends himself on the show, and he does make a good point. I mean, not that he couldn't, but he does make a good point. He's like, why would I be married to Dorothy for 48 years and then decide I wanted to do this to her?
Right. It is weird.
Not that couldn't happen, obviously, but it's like, it is weird. 48 years, it's like, why now are you suddenly got a killer? You know what I mean? Like, what?
We're not even killer, just like,
right.
It seems a little extreme to
it's
do
like,
that out of nowhere.
It took you 48 years to realize that you wanted to, you know what I mean? That is a good point.
Right. And I don't know, I just have a feeling it was someone else.
Regardless, the theory is interesting. This is a post that a Redditor made that makes a very compelling argument about the Bill Whacker thing. And so let's read this. What is odd is that despite receiving a blow to the head that knocked her out, she didn't have serious injuries. Taking a blow that knocks you out long enough to be bound and gagged is usually fairly serious. I also found it odd that whomever saw fit to ransack the house did it 3 times. Typically, professional thieves knock over a couple of choice houses and move on. But when I consider that it might have been a family member, this detail makes more sense. I have several friends that have been robbed by family members. Often more than once, as their thief usually only takes what they feel they need at the time. This fits in with the random return of stolen items and the taunting messages. This part feels personal. This is the part that makes me feel strongly that it was a person known to them. When I see that the stalker then continues to call them after they change their phone number, I'm fairly certain that this person had an in somehow with the Whackers. It would take a lot of footwork to get their number that reliably after multiple changes. That's another good point.
That
I
makes
forgot
a
about
lot of
that.
sense.
And it made me think, what if this blonde kid, and I'm not saying this is true, but like, what if he literally just, his car broke down, he made a call, thanked her, and left, but Bill was there.
Right.
And it was just like this perfect opportunity
for him to do something like that.
Because I think Bill was at work apparently or doing so. He wasn't there when that boy showed up.
Right.
That would be interesting if, as that kid left, it used him as a scapegoat. Not saying that's what happened. Yeah, that is an interesting thought. Interesting thought. Interesting things. Like we said. Also, why would you be married to someone for 48 years? You know, that is true. It's all, none of it makes sense. And I do wonder, if not Bill, maybe someone in the community or something.
Right, maybe someone else they knew. Because, yeah, I don't know. It being Bill, it is the most logical explanation, I guess.
Right.
But there is just a lot that would need to also be true for that to be the case. Whereas it being a family member or someone in the community, it does make more sense, because this definitely does feel personal.
It does.
And yeah, like maybe that person that came in, that person that asked for the phone, maybe they were just coming in to make sure that no one else was in the house, that Bill wasn't there and it was just Dorothy.
Right.
And then maybe they went out to tell that person, like, hey,
that's true. Maybe they were with Bill or
just someone.
That's a good point. Maybe they were someone. They're like, hey, go in because she won't know who you are. That's a good point. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
But now on to our next. This is the story of the Denver Spider-Man. Now this story concerns the Peters family. Philip Peters and his wife, Helen. Philip was 73 years old and retired, and he'd worked for many years at the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad Company and had lived with his wife, Helen, at their house on West Moncrief Place for over 3 decades. Once again, kind of like the Whackers.
Yeah.
Well known about the town.
It's not like they just moved in. They've been there for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
An elderly couple. The town loved them. They loved the town. Their children were now grown adults, and they lived in the nearby town of Grand Junction, Colorado. And on top of this, Philip and Helen were both accomplished musicians. Philip was a member of the Denver Guitar Club, and occasionally him and Helen would both teach guitar and mandolin lessons there. So, charming elderly couple that the whole town loved, essentially, once again. So the date was October 17th, 1941. And for the last several weeks, Philip had actually been living alone in their house because Helen Peters had had an accident of some kind that left her with a broken hip. She had been at the hospital for a number of weeks resting and recovering. So Philip, like you said, been on his own for quite a while. Well, Philip got up one night when he heard a noise coming from somewhere in the house. He made his way to the kitchen, and to his horror, he found a tall, gaunt figure standing in front of the refrigerator emptying out the icebox. Philip drew up his walking cane and did his best to whack the intruder, but unfortunately the intruder had a gun.
Oh no.
The gun was actually Philip's. They must have found it in the house. The intruder didn't shoot Philip, but used the butt of the gun to pistol whip to beat him, essentially. And it beat him so bad that the pistol broke in half. And that's when the intruder picked up a heavy iron stove shaker and then beat Philip to death.
Oh my God. What the fuck?
About an hour later, Philip's body was discovered by neighbors. I'm guessing that knowing he was living alone, people maybe checked in on him periodically, you know.
Right.
Well, the police were called and the house was investigated. They searched everywhere, but found no trace of this intruder. It was like Philip had been there on his own. They investigated Philip's past and tried to figure out if he had any known enemies, but of course, there was nothing. And of course, Helen's in the hospital at this time, and she hears this news and is devastated. She wasn't even home, she's been away from her husband for, I'm sure he was visiting her at the hospital, so how horrible, you're already recovering and you find out your husband's been murdered.
Oh, God.
Well, time passes and Helen recovers enough that the hospital releases her. And the town obviously felt so horrible for Helen, and people regularly checked in on her and brought her food, stuff like that. A friend of hers even moved in with her and sort of worked as her caretaker / housekeeper. Just one, to keep her company, and two, because she couldn't get one, she just had broken hip, she needs help doing stuff around the house. But in the coming weeks, though, things got weird. Helen and her friend began to think that the house may be haunted. Food would go missing and items would show up in places they shouldn't be. It's like, well, I thought the candle was over there. They would just show up at random parts of the house. Or they'd go missing for a while and then just show back up.
Oh my God.
Kind of like the Whackers.
Right.
And then there would be noises and bumps in the night. Helen obviously wondered if maybe this was Philip, her past husband, Philip trying to communicate with her in some way. The friend that had moved in with Helen, though, wasn't so optimistic. She was not down with ghosts and actually decided to move out, but she pleaded with Helen to not risk it and move out of there as well. So Helen heeded her advice and she went to stay with her children in Grand Junction. But even with the house vacant, strange things kept happening. Neighbors, they had asked neighbors to periodically check in on the house, make sure it was okay.
Right.
But neighbors would occasionally check in and notice strange things. Like things would be moved from when they last checked in on the house. Like they'd check in one out, later that day check in and like furniture would be moved or something like that, like weird stuff. They also reported strange smells coming from somewhere.
Yeah, this is sounding paranormal.
Sounding paranormal, right? People would also sometimes say they saw someone inside the house through the window, but when they'd rush into the house, it would be empty. Well, in July of 1942, 2 officers by the name of Roy Bloxham and Bill Jackson were stationed outside the house. They had been receiving so many reports of a stranger being seen inside of the Peters house that they decided to not wait for a call and just station out there and see if they could catch whoever this was. Well, this paid off when they spotted a figure inside of the Peters home. So they rushed in, as they always did, but as always, the house was empty. Looked around, couldn't find anything, and they were just about to leave again when they heard the sound of a lock clicking upstairs. They ran up the stairs and got up there just in time to catch sight of a pair of legs disappearing up into a small ceiling door to the attic.
Oh my God.
They grabbed the stranger's legs and yanked him down and arrested him. The suspect was taken to the police station downtown where he eventually confessed to his crimes. Theodore Edward Conies was his name, but he would forever be remembered as the Denver Spider-Man. So let's give you a little backstory of how this all came to be. Conies was born on November 10th, 1882 in the town of Petersburg, Illinois. The family had moved around a bit after Conies' father died in 1888. In 1907, the family settled down in Denver, Colorado. Well, for his whole life, Conies suffered from ill health and apparently was just very frail. In fact, doctors had told him and his family that he would not live to see his 18th birthday.
Wow.
And because of that, he actually never finished high school because he thought he was going to die. He ended up becoming an old man, but he thought he was going to die.
That's crazy.
Well, he worked in various jobs around Denver as bookkeeper, even worked in advertising and sales. Yet for some reason, Coney was apparently most of his life was homeless. And he resented how folks treated him because of his frail disposition. And apparently he had always stated that he wished he could live somewhere in solitude, away from other people. So what had actually brought Conies to the Peters doorstep? Conies had actually met Philip Peters when he wandered into the Denver Guitar Club one day. And he met him there, and he actually was going to their house, to their residence, to ask for some sort of financial help.
Oh.
But when he got there, no one was home. So he broke in. And he's taking food and stuff. Well, he happened to notice a small cubby hole that led to the attic. And keep in mind, Helen was in the hospital at this time. But here's the kicker. Conies lived in the house with Philip without him knowing it for 5 weeks before he was actually killed.
That's that is my actual nightmare.
Yeah, so Philip had been living with this man in his walls for 5 weeks and probably was hearing noises and shit like that before he actually got killed.
God.
And then once Helen came home, she continued to live there for several months until she moved out with her friend. She lived there for like a few months. So she was living in close quarters to this psycho.
Living just above her this whole time.
Yeah, and coming down into the house at night, getting stuff like...
Oh, that makes my skin crawl. Oh, God, that's so scary. I keep looking over at our hallway over here because I'm afraid someone's going to pop their head out.
I know, right? Well, everyone was shocked that someone could live in such close quarters with folks yet go unnoticed. And the name Denver Spider-Man actually came from a quote made by a police detective who worked on the case named Fred Zarnow, who said, "A man would have to be a spider to stand it long up there." Conies was sentenced to life in prison, and he served out the rest of his life at the Colorado State Penitentiary in Cannon City, Colorado.
What a fucking frightening story.
And I love that name, the Denver Spider-Man.
Oh, it's such a good name.
When I had first heard of this tale, I had just seen the title, and it's like, it gives you so, you're like, wow, what the hell does that mean?
Right, because you think like Spider-Man.
Right,
you know,
right.
like,
Is he like a cryptid or like a...
or is he a superhero?
Exactly.
Oh, God, that one is so creepy. I think about that a lot, about how scary it would be if you found out someone was living in your house and you didn't know it, or if they just appeared all of a sudden, like they had been there the whole time and you had no clue. Just the invasion of privacy alone is gross.
Ooh, yeah, it would be just a horrifying feeling. And it's one of those things where it's like, you find out later how like in danger you were.
Oh, God.
But buckle up.
Oh, no.
Because we have arrived at our third story.
Oh, goodness.
This is the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. Horrible story. Horrible
Yeah, this
story.
is wild.
This nightmare happened on the night of September 22nd, 2006, in the town of Pocatello, Idaho. Cassie Jo Stoddart was a teenager in high school. She was over at her aunt and uncle's house on Whispering Cliffs Drive. She was house sitting for them while they were out of town, and they also had 3 cats and 2 dogs, so she was, there taking care of them and everything. Mm-hmm. And Cassie was apparently a straight A student, very smart, very well liked around town, everything. She was also there with her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, who had arrived at around 6 p.m. Now, later on in that evening while they were hanging out, 2 classmates of theirs stopped by to hang out. And these classmates were 2 boys, 2 16-year-old boys they went to school with, named Brian Draper and Tori Adamsick. Cassie happily showed them around the house, even showed them the basement, gave them a little tour. And then the teens all gathered in the living room to watch Kill Bill Volume 2.
A great movie.
They were there for about 2 hours when Brian and Tori decided they were going to go catch a movie at the local movie theater, and they said goodbye to Cassie and Matt and went on their way. So now in the house, it's just Cassie and Matt, and they're watching a movie, watching TV. But before long, though, they began to hear strange noises coming from the basement. Cassie and Matt both heard it, but decided to stay put. And that's when the power suddenly went out in the whole house. Well, Cassie and Matt thought that was weird, so they got up and they're looking around for a flashlight or something to see with, when suddenly the power comes back on. Well, that was a relief for sure, but that's when Matt and Cassie noticed that one of the dogs was staring at the basement door, growling real low, and its fur was standing on end. Now, this freaked them both out. Matt called his mother and asked if he could actually stay there with Cassie that night because her aunt and uncle were out of town and she was nervous and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, since Cassie's aunt and uncle were out of town, Matt's mom said no, but she said Cassie could come over and stay the night at Matt's family's place. Well, there was no problem with that. But Cassie, though, didn't want to abandon her post. Her aunt and uncle had asked her to house sit for them and take care of the pets, and she would have felt horrible if she would have just bailed on them like that. Mm-hmm. So in the end, Cassie decided to stay and watch the house.
Oh, gosh.
Matt's mother came and picked him up at about 10:30, leaving Cassie alone. While in the car with his mom, Matt actually called Tori's cell phone to see where he and Brian were and if they maybe wanted to possibly meet up. And Matt could barely hear Tori on the phone. It was as if he was whispering. So Matt just ended the call, assuming they were in a movie theater, and couldn't really talk. But back to the house where Cassie's alone. The hour was getting late and she's getting tired. And just as she's winding down, though, watching some TV and falling asleep on the living room couch, once again, the power went out.
Oh my God.
Cassie didn't know what to do other than just try to get some sleep. So she's like, well, I'm already tired, the lights are out. And that's actually what she did. She laid there and went to sleep. But then somewhere upstairs now, a closet door began to open and close. But Cassie was actually unaware of this because she was asleep in the living room. And that's when 2 figures cloaked in black, wearing strange white masks, entered the room and attacked Cassie. Cassie was murdered after having been stabbed 30 times.
Oh my God.
12 of the stab wounds would have been fatal, they deemed in an investigation.
Jesus.
Brian and Tori actually met up with Matt the next day. Matt was trying to get a hold of Cassie, but couldn't get a hold of her. Her body was discovered the next day, 2 days after the murder. And when police discovered that Brian Draper and Tori Adamsick had been there the night they were brought in for questioning, it didn't take long to realize that it could be them when the teens started to blame each other.
Oh no.
Tori had told police that they had gone to Cassie's for a party, but when the party never happened, they left to go to the movies. The first giveaway, though, was that the teens couldn't remember what actually happened in the movie that they were supposedly seeing.
Oh, God. Dumbasses. Dumbassery.
A few days later, after their arrest, Brian led police to where they had stashed everything out in Black Rock Canyon. There they found 2 knives, one a silver and black knife with a smooth blade, and the other a folding knife. There was also a red and white mask with latex gloves, and worst of all, a videotape where the boys could clearly be heard saying they had murdered Cassie. Here's a brief clip of the boys in their car driving just after they had killed Cassie.
I just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke.
I'm shaking.
I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie. Oh, fuck. That felt like fucking real. I mean, it went by so fast.
Shut the fuck up. We gotta get our act straight.
Okay.
Oh my God, what absolute fucking chode
What
morons.
Chode morons. First of all, obviously, the fact that they just killed this innocent young girl, fuck them.
Kill. Yeah, I fucking hate these motherfuckers.
But then, like, to just shout, and God.
Well, their voices sound exactly what I thought their voices were going
Right.
to sound like. They sound like such teenage douchebags.
I would think, and I could be dead wrong, but I would think at 16 I would know not to hold a camera and be like, I murdered this person.
Yeah, what were they thinking?
What a fucking idiot.
Why
Like,
did they even, like, why did they do that? Just to be stupid?
And just so for clarification, the video is actually a bit longer because they also, the day before, I guess they did video of them like planning their.
Why would they do that? It's because they're like, they're children still. They have, that is what is so sick about this.
Elsewhere in the video, Brian can be heard saying, this was before they killed her, Brian can apparently be heard saying that they're going to make history by becoming serial killers.
Oh my God.
They expressed admiration for killers like the Zodiac Killer, Ted Bundy, Hillside Strangler, as well as the perpetrators of the Columbine shooting.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And they also love the movie Scream. I don't know if maybe because the video thing I know was a bit like the Columbine douchebags like filmed themselves before, like, you know, target practice and just I think they had done a lot of that shit. So I don't know if it was like that, like it was an homage to them. And then of course in Scream, like there's this, there's a self-awareness. Part of what makes Scream so incredible is there's this strange sort of self-awareness to it without being comedy in a weird way. It's actually a funny the movie is funny.
Scream is really funny, yeah.
While at the same time being scary. Yeah, so I don't know if they just were caught up in that. I have no idea.
Oh my God. What? And it's like, they're just sound like such dicks.
They do.
With the voices like, oh my God, dude, can you, it's like, shut up, get out of here.
They look like a couple of fucking meth heads.
Read a fucking book.
So this is apparently what happened. Cut to back when Brian and Tori showed up to hang with Cassie and Matt. When she was giving them a tour of the house while they were in the basement, Brian stealthily unlocked the basement door so that he and Tori could enter that way later. When the two boys left saying they were going to the movies, they actually just drove a bit down the road and then parked. They exited their car, put on their costumes, including the masks and the knives, and they quietly entered the house through that basement door. This is now upstairs. This was when Matt and Cassie were watching TV, so the boys tried to make noise in order to lure the two down to the basement.
Oh.
And when that didn't work, they turned the lights off. And then when no one came down to flip the switch on the breaker, they turned it back on. This is now when Cassie began to feel nervous, right? And the dog is acting strange and all that.
Yeah, it totally makes sense now.
Well, once Matt left at around 10:30, they cut off the power again. But this was also about the time Matt called them to see if they wanted to hang out. That's why they were whispering, because they were in the house, not at the movie theater.
Oh my God, that's so dark and grim.
To know that you were speaking to them right before they were about to commit, and you thought they were at the movie theater, I'm sure that's just but yeah, that's why they were whispering. They were in the house.
Oh my God.
Well, when they got no response to the power being cut that second time, they made their way upstairs to find Cassie asleep. So they tried to wake her and scare her by slamming the closet door at the top of the stairs. Maybe that would wake her, you know. But she slept through it, and that's when they attacked. And both boys have been sentenced to life in prison.
Okay, good.
I know they have appealed it and whatnot, but their appeals keep getting turned down.
Yeah.
Just awful. An awful, awful, awful story.
Fuck those two.
Two shows. Just two grade A fucking shows.
Oh my God, that is so terrible. And such a scary story that, like, that's why we knew we had to include it in this
Yes.
There's Someone in the House episode, because there's just something about it not being your own house in general.
Exactly.
And I think everyone's kind of had that experience where you're in an unfamiliar place and you don't really know what's normal or not.
Right.
And you just don't know, like, oh, is there always like weird kind of bump in the night noises going on, or is this something more?
Exactly.
Oh God, that is so frightening.
And that's why, these three stories we had known about for a while, and they would have obviously made good episodes for Creep Street, but they just weren't long enough, really.
Yeah, so we wanted to...
So that's why we did this little collection of stories, but three very different but awful
Yes.
home invasion stories.
The first story made me think a lot of Cindy James.
Yeah, Cindy James, Circleville Rider, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Watch Your House. Yeah, very much. And it's also, right, like Cindy James, are they doing this to themselves? Is Bill doing it?
Yeah,
right.
Not knowing exactly what's going on.
Right, exactly.
Oh, God. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for doing all of that incredible, incredible research.
Thank you.
What an absolutely wild ride, a scary, scary ride. We hope you at home are not home alone. And if you are home alone, you're not, because we are here
That's right.
with you, baby.
And let me tell you something. Let me send you off to sleep with some beautiful poetry.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, the names of our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth, the Oh So Suave, Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude, Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand, Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, and the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey.
Thank you for reading off those righteous names. And thank you to all of our Patreon donors. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you, we think about you, and we are so grateful for you. To join those lovely, lovely people, feel free to check out patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast for more bonus content.
Oh, yeah.
Also, please like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend. Any of those things really help us out. We so appreciate it, and it really means the world. Thank you so much.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.